Hello everyone, Kim Victoria here. This is an incomplete demo because I was having some technology issues, didn't realize it. I'll get better at that as I go along, I'm sure. Anyway, for the acrylic painting demonstration, that first part didn't work out, so I'm just doing a rerun of my oil painting, the very beginning of the painting. And I did the same thing with acrylics, just uh, just basic acrylic paint, nothing special. And I worked with a very pale yellow ochre, which you will see in a minute. So I was going through and finding the objects. And then what I did was I blocked them in. But I started out the same as the oil painting video. So that's why I just went ahead and insert this here. Because that was the main thing, is just using a pale yellow ochre to block in the basic shapes, the basic kind of geometric shapes. I did not, however, put in any dark paint right off the bat, which you will see in a moment, but I just used a little bit darker yellow ochre so that I would find my shapes. And that's what's the big part of it is the first part of it is just finding your shapes. But unlike the oil, what I did with the acrylic is I blocked everything in. I added some matte medium because I was having the paint was drying so fast, and the matte medium makes it dry a little bit slower. So I blocked in the shapes, and here I'm just refining the shapes a little bit and making them pop out more. And so mainly I just want you to see that I blocked everything in with yellow ochre and a little bit of burnt sienna, and I had white. So that's all I have on the palette initially because the paint dries so fast. The other thing about acrylic paint is that it is translucent. So because of its translucency, you want to start really pale. You want to work from light to dark with acrylic paint rather than with oils. I can start really dark and I can add light to it. So I can work back and forth as I did there on the apple shape of putting some lighter value on just a slightly darker value, and it'll show up nicely. But I can't make radical changes. It's very, very difficult to make radical changes in acrylic. You really have to plan ahead. And that's what I do when I do work with acrylics. Now, I don't usually do, and I'm just going to be really clear here, is that I have been trying to use acrylics for this kind of painting, which I really enjoy still lifes. But I prefer oils. I have more manipulation power with oils. I can get a result that I like better. I'm more satisfied. I have more fun. So I think what I want to say right here is I encourage you to experiment with different media. I also enjoy watercolors. With watercolors, for me, it's more about drawing. I do drawing before I watercolor. With oils, I paint directly on the canvas and I make drawing with the brush, and I do all my layers with the brush. So for me, oils are my favorite, and I don't feel that I do a very good job with acrylics. So that's why this is somewhat of an abbreviated demonstration, because I really want to try. I really wanted to see what would happen if I made a sincere effort. And I did. I made a sincere effort with this painting. And I'm not real happy with it. I'm not real unhappy with it, but it wasn't it's just not as fun. So I hope you'll forgive me for that. I know there are some really fabulous acrylic teachers out there. I think I'm just going to stick with oil paint, and what I share is valid in many ways for acrylic painting. but it's just not my preference. So what I'm doing is I keep reloading the brush. So that's something I can tell you about acrylic paint right away, is you want to keep reloading the brush. You do not want to try and spread your colors around. You just want to reload the brush, reload the brush, reload the brush over and over and over again. Because another thing that acrylic paint does is it shrinks. And you will wind up with little pinholes if you've tried to paint too thinly. Okay, so it's really important to keep loading the brush with more paint, more paint, more paint. You need that thickness with acrylic. You need it with oils, but you absolutely need it with acrylics. You've got to get that thickness of paint in there. But I'm doing everything the same as I did with oils in a lot of ways. I don't normally, well, they're just very different. They really are very different. With the acrylics, because it is more translucent, there's a different thought process. You're going to have a little different experience with getting your colors to work. I don't find it as easy to color match with acrylics as with oils. Also, the colors change when they dry. So there's a lot of differences. It's very, very interesting. So I just wanted to share a few of those things with you and not try to redo the whole video. I think you're seeing the most important part is me trying to finesse it, because the first part is just blocking in big color masses, big shapes, keeping these shapes very, very simple. So what I'm doing here is I'm just very slowly making little changes, a little bit darker, a little bit lighter. And then when the acrylics are dry, it's really, really easy to add matte medium or gloss medium, depending on what your preference is. And then glazing over the whole thing. So I'm going to be doing a little bit of that next, but I wanted to get a little more separation between the light and dark. So the way I am applying a little bit darker yellow ochre right now is the way I put the base color on. So that's really all I'm doing, is I'm creating kind of a gradation. I'm making the objects in the foreground stand out from the background more by making the background darker. So that's the goal of what I'm doing right now. And I'm being very brushy. I want to keep it very loose and brushy. I don't want lines and things like that. I'm trying to be very, very loose. And you notice how the objects pop out more by just darkening up the background a little bit. So what I've added to the palette is now some burnt umber so that I could strengthen up the darks. I also added just a little bit of hooker's green. That's what I added. I figured I would do some glazing. The painting is dry. It only took a few minutes. This is Liquitex. A couple of the tubes seem to be thickening up oddly. So I will not be keeping those tubes. I'm going to let those go. It's just one of those things with acrylics, is that they, especially, and this is an important thing to know about acrylic paint, you can't let them freeze. And I may have left these tubes in storage while we were moving and I hadn't used them yet, and they very well may have encountered some freezing weather. So that's probably why I need to let those go. So here I've added some hooker's green, and I am trying to get a little bit of green in the apple. And I just keep going back and mixing some more paint. The effect you get with acrylic paints is going to be different than what you're able to achieve with oils. And really, I think that's all I need to say about that. And so this is something for you to experience, is to try things out and find out what you like. I'm I used a lot of matte medium at the very end just to create a glaze of color. And then I looked over the whole thing and kind of sat back and went, okay, I think I'm just going to do a few finishing touches on it. Not a whole lot, just a few little finishing touches. I only add highlights at the very, very end. Those final little touches. And I'm using a little burnt umber to modify the shape of those little dots. And don't worry about it too much. It's a rough painting. So I hope that on some level this was a bit informative. Oh, goodness. Yeah. I will continue to explore acrylic painting. I'm not, I'm not too sure how much I'm going to do of this kind of art with acrylics because I do like them for other uses. And, but yeah, so I hope this was useful for you and informative, and I hope you give it a try. I mean, I do suggest that you have good quality paint and you have some medium and you keep it loose. Don't get too precious about things. And it's not a photograph. You're not trying to create a photograph. You're creating a painting. And I hope that this was helpful. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Okay, I'm going to be doing another art class. We'll see what it comes out to be. Thank you. Bye bye for now.